At 2300 hours on December 11, 1944, Corporal James Mackenzie crouched behind a shattered concrete wall along the Ormoc waterfront, watching three dark shapes slide silently across the black water of the bay. He was 32 years old, had been in combat for just 2 months, and had zero experience fighting warships. The Imperial Japanese Navy had sent at least 5 vessels into Ormoc Bay that night, carrying an estimated 750 troops to reinforce a collapsing defensive line. Mackenzie was not supposed to be watching for ships. No one in the 77th Infantry Division was supposed to be fighting the Japanese Navy, but the 77th had stopped following the rulebook the moment they landed on Leyte. 6 months earlier, they had been the oldest infantry division in the United States Army. Average age, 32. Other divisions called them the Old Bastards. The Japanese used a name that translated roughly to demons who take no prisoners. The statistics supported both. Across the entire Pacific War, American forces killed roughly 2.2 million Japanese troops and captured about 50,000 prisoners, a capture rate of roughly 2.2%. The 77th Infantry Division alone killed more than 43,000 Japanese soldiers and captured just 358, a capture rate of 0.8%, less than 1/3 the average of other American units in the Pacific. On Leyte alone, the division killed over 19,000 enemy soldiers. In 6 weeks, they captured just 124 prisoners, a kill-to-capture ratio of 157 to 1. Major General Andrew D. Bruce commanded this division of accountants, taxi drivers, and factory workers who had turned the western shore of Leyte into a graveyard. Bruce was 49 years old, a career artillery officer who believed in mathematics, preparation, and overwhelming firepower. He landed the 77th at Dulag on December 7th, 3.5 miles south of Ormoc. The Japanese did not expect an amphibious assault on the western coast. They expected the Americans to fight their way through the mountains. Bruce gave them 72 hours to understand their mistake. By December 10th, the 77th had fought through 23 miles of fortified positions and captured Ormoc. The town was rubble. The supply dumps were ash. The Lau River ran red for 3 days. Still, the Japanese kept coming. Every night, barges, landing craft, and small transports attempted to slip past American naval patrols, carrying reinforcements to the remaining Japanese forces in the mountains. Those reinforcements were essential. General Tomoyuki Yamashita had committed to making Leyte the decisive battle for the Philippines. Without fresh troops, the island would fall. Stopping those reinforcements was supposed to be the Navy's job. Destroyers patrolled the approaches to Ormoc Bay. PT boats hunted the shallow waters along the coast. Army infantry divisions were not equipped to fight naval vessels. But the 77th Infantry Division had brought something unusual with them to Leyte: M10 tank destroyers. The 3-inch gun motor carriage M10 had been designed to kill German tanks in Europe. It mounted a powerful 3-inch gun in an open-top turret on a modified Sherman chassis. It was never meant to engage ships. But on the night of December 11, 1944, that distinction was about to stop mattering. Maximum effective range against armored targets, 1,000 yards. Maximum effective range against a ship, unknown. No one had ever tried. The M10s were positioned along the Ormoc waterfront with the 307th Infantry Regiment. Their primary mission was to destroy Japanese bunkers, fortified positions, and machine gun nests. Their secondary mission was direct fire support for infantry assaults. Engaging enemy naval vessels was not in the manual. Back to Mackenzie. He watched the dark shapes grow larger. The lead vessel was roughly the size of an LST, likely a No. 101 class Japanese landing ship. It moved slowly toward the beach northwest of Ormoc, where Japanese troops still held positions in the hills. If that ship reached shore and unloaded successfully, the Americans would face another week of brutal fighting to clear those reinforcements. The M10 crews had received their orders 20 minutes earlier. Track the vessels, wait for illumination, fire on command. No one knew if tank destroyer rounds would penetrate a ship's hull. No one knew if the Japanese would return fire. No one knew if this would work at all. Mackenzie checked his watch. 23:55 hours, 5 minutes to midnight. The dark shapes were now inside 1,000 yards. The M10 crews waited for someone to light the night. At exactly midnight, the first flare rose into the sky. A 60mm illumination round fired from an infantry mortar position 200 yards inland climbed 300 feet and burst into brilliant white light. Ormoc Bay was suddenly exposed, flat, bright, and inescapable. The Japanese landing ship appeared in perfect silhouette. Transport number Simts Pistasmit Divini, approximately 200 feet long, roughly 800 tons displacement. The vessel had already beached itself northwest of Ormoc. Troops poured down ramps at the bow and stern. Dark figures moved across the white sand. Heavy equipment rolled off the deck. The Japanese were landing armor. The American gun crews had 30 seconds of illumination before the flare burned out. 30 seconds to identify the target, estimate range, traverse the gun, load, and fire. They did not hesitate. The M10 crews had trained for this moment without ever knowing it. Every tank destroyed in practice. Every bunker shattered during the drive to Ormoc. Every calculation drilled into muscle memory. This time the target wasn't a tank. It was a warship. Every hour spent calculating deflection and elevation for moving targets now mattered. All of it applied to a ship the same way it applied to armor. The lead M10 fired first. A 3-inch armor-piercing round left the barrel at 2,600 feet per second. Range to target, 970 yards. The recoil slammed through the 17-ton chassis, driving it backward 6 inches into the sand. The shell crossed Ormoc Bay in just over a second. It struck transport number 159 on the starboard side, just above the waterline. The round was designed to penetrate 3 inches of hardened steel at 1,000 yards. The Japanese transport's hull plating was less than an inch thick. The shell punched through the outer hull, tore through the cargo hold, and detonated against the port bulkhead. The explosion ripped a hole the size of a truck into the ship's side. Water flooded the cargo hold at an estimated 2,000 gallons per minute. The vessel listed 7 degrees to starboard. Japanese troops on the ramps froze. Men inside the hold scrambled for the exits as the crew tried to assess the damage. Almost immediately, American artillery began ranging in on the beached ship. 40 seconds later, the second flare ignited the sky. Transport number 159 was settling deeper into the sand now. The stern had dropped nearly 3 feet. Troops were abandoning the vessel, wading through chest-deep water toward the shore. Japanese mortars from the hills opened up on American positions along the Ormoc waterfront. The return fire was immediate. The M10 that scored the first hit fired again. The crew corrected for the ship's changing angle. The second round struck below the waterline aft, opening a second breach. Now the flooding exceeded any possible pumping capacity. The transport was doomed. But it wasn't alone. 4 more vessels were still approaching from the north, 3 barges and another larger transport, clearly visible under the flare light. The Japanese captains watched Transport 159 sink. They did the math. They had roughly 700 troops to deliver. They had direct orders from General Yamashita himself. Retreat was not an option. The Japanese ships kept coming. The M10 crews reloaded. Mortar teams prepared additional illumination. The 7th Anti-Aircraft Battalion rolled their 40mm guns into position along the waterfront. The 77th Infantry Division was about to fight the only documented ship-to-shore artillery duel of the Pacific War. The third flare burst overhead. The second Japanese vessel was 600 yards from shore. Every gun along the Ormoc waterfront had a target now. Major General Bruce watched from his command post 300 yards inland. This scenario existed in no tactical manual. He had studied at Fort Sill, but the old bastards had stopped following manuals the moment they landed. At 00:15 hours, the order came down. Fire at will. The waterfront erupted. 40mm anti-aircraft guns fired point blank at surface targets. 50 caliber machine guns raked the barges. Self-propelled howitzers from the 307th Infantry poured high-explosive shells into the bay, and M10 tank destroyers fired 3-inch armor-piercing rounds designed to kill tigers and panthers at ships designed only to carry men. The mathematics were merciless. The Japanese vessels had no armor, no meaningful defensive weapons, no room to maneuver in the shallow water of Ormoc Bay. They were cargo ships attempting to unload troops while under concentrated, coordinated artillery fire from prepared positions on shore. Against that, there was no answer. The second Japanese transport took its first hit at 00:16 hours, An M10 round punched through the bow, penetrated the forward hold, and detonated among troops packed for landing. The blast killed an estimated 40 soldiers instantly. The ship kept coming. Japanese discipline held even under direct fire. The captain maintained course toward the shore. Then the self-propelled howitzers joined in. 105mm high explosive rounds were not designed to penetrate hulls. They were designed to destroy everything within a 15-yard radius through overpressure and fragmentation. The first shell slammed into the transport's superstructure. The second tore into the deck. The third struck at the waterline and peeled the hull open like a can. The transport pushed forward another 200 yards before flooding became uncontrollable. The captain ran it aground 400 yards from shore. Too far for troops to wade, too shallow for the ship to float. Japanese soldiers jumped into water over their heads. Many drowned immediately. Others tried to swim for shore as American machine guns tracked them through the surf. By 0020 hours, transport number 159 was completely submerged. Only the superstructure remained visible. Roughly 150 Japanese troops had reached shore before it sank. Another 200 were still in the water. The rest went down with the ship. American estimates put casualties from that transport alone at around 300. 3 barges remained. They were smaller and faster, drawing less water and operating closer to shore. Each carried roughly 50 troops. The Japanese captain scattered them, hoping to split American fire. It was a sound tactical decision. It failed completely. The 7th Anti-Aircraft Battalion had positioned 6 40mm guns along the waterfront. Each gun could fire 120 rounds per minute, with an effective surface range of 2,000 yards. The barges were well inside that envelope. At 0022 hours, the 40mm opened fire. The first barge disintegrated. 40mm rounds detonate on impact. When dozens of explosive shells strike a wooden barge in seconds, the vessel stops existing. It becomes floating wreckage and bodies. Fewer than 10 survivors were seen in the water. The second barge attempted to turn away. The helmsman threw the rudder hard over, trying to escape into deeper water. The M10 crews tracked the movement. At 0024 hours, the lead M10 fired. The round struck amidships and snapped the barge in half. Both sections sank in under 30 seconds. Machine gun fire found the men thrashing in the oil-slicked water. The third barge came closest. Its captain drove straight for the beach at full speed, ignoring incoming fire. 50 caliber rounds tore through the wooden hull. Mortar shells burst around it. The barge finally grounded in 3 feet of water, 70 yards from shore. And then everything went silent for a moment. Japanese troops poured over the sides of the grounded barge and ran for the beach. They made it 15 yards before the machine guns cut them down. The 77th Infantry Division had established interlocking fields of fire across every approach to the Ormoc waterfront. The Japanese ran straight into a killing zone. No cover, no supporting fire, no chance. All 50 died in the water. The engagement lasted 18 minutes. 5 Japanese vessels attacked. 5 Japanese vessels were destroyed. Estimated enemy casualties, 750 troops. American casualties, 0. But the night was not over. Radio intercept teams reported more vessels approaching from the north. At 0045 hours, General Bruce received the after-action report. Enemy reinforcement attempt at Ormoc Bay. 5 vessels destroyed. Estimated 750 enemy casualties. 0 American losses. The numbers were precise. 1 M10 had fired 7 rounds. Another fired 5. The third fired 3. 15 3-inch rounds total. The self-propelled howitzers expended 42 shells. The 40mm guns fired roughly 600 rounds. The mathematics told Bruce everything. The Japanese could not reinforce Ormoc by sea as long as the 77th held the waterfront. Any vessel that tried would face the same concentrated fire. Any troops that reached the water would die before reaching shore. The Imperial Japanese Navy had just lost a naval engagement to an infantry division that had no business fighting ships. At 100 hours, Bruce sent his report to 24th Corps headquarters. Enemy attempted reinforcement at Ormoc Bay. 5 vessels destroyed. Request air reconnaissance at first light to confirm kills. The Corps commander read it twice before believing it. The strategic implications were immediate. Ormoc was the last major port on the western coast of Leyte still usable for Japanese reinforcement. General Yamashita had been running supplies and troops through Ormoc Bay since late October, despite devastating losses to American air and naval forces. Between November 9th and December 11th, the Japanese attempted 9 major convoy operations to Leyte. They landed approximately 34,000 troops. In the process, they lost 20 transport vessels, 6 destroyers, 1 submarine, 3 escort vessels, and 1 patrol boat. American losses in the same period were 3 destroyers, 1 high-speed transport, and 2 LSMs. Naval historians would later describe the Battle of Ormoc Bay as one of the most brutal series of engagements in the Pacific War. Admiral Halsey committed Task Force 38. The 5th Air Force flew continuous interdiction missions. PT boats hunted the shallows every night. And now the 77th Infantry Division had turned the Ormoc waterfront into a kill zone the Imperial Japanese Navy could not penetrate. The Japanese tried again on the night of December 12th. 2 barges approached from the north at 2200 hours. American illumination rounds caught them at 800 yards. The M10 crews destroyed both before they came within 500 yards of shore. Estimated enemy casualties, 100. American losses, 0. They tried again on December 13th, 1 transport and 3 escort barges. The transport was larger than number 159, possibly 900 tons displacement, carrying an estimated 400 troops and heavy equipment. American guns sank it in 12 minutes. The escort barges never reached 1,000 yards from shore. Estimated enemy casualties, 550. American losses, 0. After December 13th, General Yamashita stopped sending reinforcements to Ormoc. The Imperial Japanese Army on Leyte was cut off, and it had been done by American infantry using tank destroyers firing from shore against ships. Once, and never again in history. The mathematics had become untenable. In 3 nights, General Yamashita had lost roughly 1,300 troops attempting to reinforce positions the 77th Infantry Division was systematically destroying. By day, the Americans controlled the Ormoc Valley. By night, Japanese forces in the mountains were cut off from resupply and reinforcement. They would fight until they died. But no help was coming. On December 14th, the 77th Infantry Division pushed north out of Ormoc. The 307th Infantry Regiment took the lead. Colonel Aubrey Red Newman commanded the regiment, 43 years old, career infantry, veteran of Guam. He had watched his men destroy Japanese ships from shore. Now he led them into the mountains to finish what remained of the Japanese 35th Army. The division advanced through Kogon on December 15th, then through Valencia. On December 21st, the Japanese 1st Division attempted to hold the Libongao Road junction. The 77th bypassed them entirely, moving through terrain the Japanese believed impassable. On Christmas Day, December 25th, the division linked up with the 1st Cavalry Division advancing south. Leyte was secure. The official campaign statistics were stark. On Leyte, the 77th Infantry Division killed 19,456 Japanese soldiers. They captured 124. American losses were 543 killed and 1,469 wounded, a kill ratio of 36-1. Those numbers did not include the ships sunk on the night of December 11th. In January 1945, the United States Army conducted a formal investigation. The question was simple and unprecedented. Had an infantry division actually sunk enemy naval vessels using tank destroyers? The claim required verification. Nothing like it had ever happened in modern warfare. Tanks had never engaged warships. Tank destroyers had never fired on ships. The M10 had been designed to kill armor, not to sink transports. Investigators examined the wrecks in Ormoc Bay at low tide. Transport number 159 was visible in 15 feet of water. Its hull showed 2 clean entry holes on the starboard side. Diameter, 3 inches, consistent with M10 armor-piercing rounds. Both penetrations were below the waterline. The flooding pattern matched the timeline recorded in after-action reports. The second transport lay in deeper water, but remained accessible to Navy divers. They identified 3 hull penetrations, 2 from 3-inch rounds and 1 from a 105mm howitzer shell. The 3-inch rounds had passed completely through the vessel, entry on the starboard side, exit through the port bulkhead. Divers recovered shell fragments from the seabed. Metallurgical analysis confirmed they were M10 armor-piercing rounds manufactured in 1944 at the WWII arsenal in New York. The investigation reached a definitive conclusion. The 77th Infantry Division had sunk multiple Japanese naval vessels using M10 tank destroyers firing from shore positions. The report stated this was the only confirmed instance in World War II of armored fighting vehicles engaging and destroying enemy warships. The only instance in the Pacific. The only instance in Europe. The only instance in the entire global conflict. The Germans had never done it. The Soviets had never done it. The British had never done it. The Japanese had never done it. Only the 77th Infantry Division had turned tank destroyers into coastal defense guns and used them to sink enemy ships during an amphibious operation. In March 1945, the M10 Tactical Manual was updated. A new section was added, Employment Against Naval Targets. It was 3 paragraphs long. It noted that M10 armor-piercing rounds could penetrate unarmored vessels at ranges up to 1,000 yards. It recommended waterline targeting to maximize flooding, and it cited the Ormoc engagement as the reference case. The update was largely theoretical, because what happened at Ormoc had already proven something no manual could anticipate. Once was enough. The opportunity to use tank destroyers against ships never came again. After Ormoc, the Japanese stopped attempting major amphibious reinforcement operations. The island-hopping campaign moved on to Iwo Jima and Okinawa, where Japanese defenders were already dug in before American forces arrived. There were no more nights when enemy ships tried to beach themselves under American shore guns. The M10 crews who fired on Transport Number 159 received no special recognition. No medals were awarded for sinking ships. The action was logged as part of the normal defense of Ormoc. The crews continued fighting through the remainder of the Leyte campaign and later shipped out for Okinawa. Major General Bruce mentioned the engagement only once in his memoirs. He wrote that the 77th Infantry Division had demonstrated unusual flexibility in employing every available weapon against the enemy, regardless of whether those weapons were designed for the task. He considered that flexibility the defining characteristic of the division. The old bastards did not care what the manual said. They cared about killing the enemy as efficiently as possible. The M10 tank destroyers remained with the 77th through Okinawa. They destroyed fortifications. They provided direct fire support. They knocked out artillery positions. They did everything tank destroyers were meant to do. They never sank another ship. The opportunity never came again. By the end of the war, the night of December 11th had become a footnote in the division's history. The 77th Infantry Division had fought through 3 major campaigns: Guam, Leyte, and Okinawa. They had killed more than 43,000 enemy soldiers. They had lost more than 2,000 of their own men. Sinking 5 Japanese vessels in 18 minutes was just another engagement in a year of continuous combat. For military historians, however, the Ormoc engagement remained unique. No other tank had ever sunk a ship. No other tank destroyer had ever engaged and destroyed naval vessels. It happened once, on one night, in one place, and it never happened again. The 77th Infantry Division was never intended to be an elite unit. When it was reactivated in March 1942, the War Department expected it to be a standard infantry formation. Nothing special, no unique mission, just another division for the Pacific. The men who filled its ranks were not elite soldiers. They were civilians from New York and New Jersey. Average age? 32. Too old for most infantry units. The Army called them reservists. Everyone else called them the old bastards. They were accountants, taxi drivers, and factory workers, drafted because America needed bodies. They trained for 14 months at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Standard infantry training, amphibious landings, jungle warfare, weapons qualification. Physical tests they passed, despite being nearly a decade older than the men around them. By June 1943, the division was ready for combat. General Bruce took command the month before. He was 47 years old, a career artillery officer with a reputation for aggressive tactics and no tolerance for incompetence. He looked at a division of middle-aged civilians and saw something else entirely. Not physical potential, but reliability, discipline, and a willingness to do whatever the situation demanded. And on one night in December 1944, that was enough to sink a warship. These men would never outrun the younger soldiers of the 1st Marine Division, but they had something the Marines did not: life experience, patience, the habit of thinking before acting. General Bruce trained them differently from most division commanders. He emphasized fire discipline over speed, maneuver over frontal assault, conservation of force over heroic charges. The old bastards learned to let firepower do the work that younger men did with bayonets. They learned to go around enemy strongpoints instead of through them. They learned that staying alive was not cowardice, it was efficiency. In March 1944, the division deployed to Hawaii and continued amphibious and jungle warfare training. The average age was now 33. Still the oldest infantry division in the U.S. Army. Still the unit other divisions watched with quiet skepticism. They got their answer on Guam. The 77th landed on July 21, 1944 during Operation Forager. The initial landings were light. Japanese defenses were concentrated elsewhere. But as the division pushed inland, they encountered the real fight: fortified jungle positions, machine gun nests, caves, artillery observers hidden in the canopy. Bruce's training paid off immediately. The old bastards did not charge. They encircled. They called in artillery. They waited. Then they moved forward and cleared what remained. The casualty ratio told the story. The 77th killed enemy soldiers at a rate far exceeding their own losses. By August 8th, Guam was secure. The division had proven it could fight. More importantly, it had proven it could win without bleeding itself dry. The after-action report was blunt. Fire discipline and tactical patience were the decisive factors. Translation: the old bastards thought before they fired and maneuvered before they assaulted. The division was scheduled for rest and refit in New Caledonia. They made it halfway. Then the orders changed. Leyte was turning into a nightmare. 6th Army needed reinforcements immediately. The 77th reversed course and headed for the Philippines. They landed on Leyte on November 23, 1944, Thanksgiving Day. No rest, no refit. Straight back into combat. For 2 weeks, the division trained and patrolled rear areas. Then Bruce received the order for Ormoc, an amphibious assault on the western coast. Seize the port, cut off Japanese reinforcements. The 77th loaded onto transports on December 6th. They hit the beaches at Depot Toe on December 7th. They captured Ormoc on December 10th. And on the night of December 11th, they sank 5 Japanese vessels attempting to reinforce the garrison. The engagement lasted 18 minutes. It demonstrated everything Bruce had taught his division. Use the right weapon for the target, concentrate fire, overwhelm the enemy, and never fight the battle the enemy expects you to fight. Do not take unnecessary risks. The M10 crews had never trained to fight ships, but they understood a single principle: put rounds on target until the target stops being a threat. That principle carried the 77th Infantry Division through Leyte, through Okinawa, and through more than 200 days of continuous combat. The 77th finished the Leyte campaign on February 5, 1945. The final statistics were unambiguous. Enemy killed, 19,456. Enemy captured, 124. American losses, 543 killed, 1,469 wounded. The Japanese 35th Army had been destroyed as an effective fighting force. General Yamashita abandoned his plan to make Leyte the decisive battle of the Philippines. The Americans owned the island. The old bastards had 60 days before their next assignment. They used the time to absorb replacements and repair equipment. The M10 tank destroyers underwent maintenance. Guns that had fired the most rounds received new barrels. Tracks worn down by hundreds of miles of jungle roads were replaced. Veteran crews trained the new men on fundamentals: how to load, how to aim, how to fire, and how to stay alive. No one trained them on how to sink ships. That lesson was already written. The men who had fired on transport number 159 on December 11th were already thinking about the next fight. Okinawa was coming. Everyone knew it would be worse than Leyte. The Japanese were not going to surrender their home islands without extracting the highest possible American casualties. The 77th landed at Karamaretto on March 26, 1945. The small islands west of Okinawa had to be secured before the main invasion. The division spent 5 days clearing Japanese defenders and destroying suicide boat bases. American casualties: 27 killed, 81 wounded. Japanese casualties: over 650 dead or captured. The mathematics remained consistent. The main Okinawa operation began on April 1st. The 77th was initially held in reserve. They landed on Ieshima on April 16th. The island contained an airfield the Americans needed. The Japanese had fortified every cave and ridgeline. The fighting was brutal. Hand-to-hand combat, tunnel systems, flamethrowers against bunkers, artillery barrages that turned hills into moonscapes. Ernie Pyle died on Ieshima on April 18th. The most famous American war correspondent had been embedded with the 77th for weeks. He liked the old bastards. He wrote about them with respect. A Japanese machine gunner killed him with a single shot to the head while he was moving forward with a reconnaissance patrol. The division erected a monument at the spot. The inscription read, "On this spot, the 77th Infantry Division lost a buddy." Ieshima fell on April 21st. The 77th then moved on to Okinawa proper. On April 25th, they relieved the 96th Infantry Division on the southern front. The Japanese defensive line stretched across the island, fortified caves, interlocking fields of fire, artillery positioned in reverse slope defenses beyond the reach of American naval guns. The 77th attacked on April 28th. The escarpment became the division's nightmare, a near-vertical ridge that had to be assaulted with ladders and cargo nets. Japanese machine guns and mortars dominated the high ground. Every yard gained cost American lives. The old bastards took the ridge the same way they took everything else. Sustained artillery, methodical infantry assault, no unnecessary risks, no heroic charges, no desperate attacks, just firepower and patience. The 77th Infantry Division advanced toward Shuri alongside the 1st Marine Division. They entered the ruins on May 31st. The Japanese had already withdrawn to their final defensive positions in the south. Through June, the 77th continued the work, sealing cave systems, clearing ridgelines, reducing fortified positions one by one. In July, the division moved to Cebu in the Philippines to prepare for the invasion of Japan. That invasion never came. Atomic bombs fell in August. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. The 77th Infantry Division never landed on the home islands. Instead, they occupied Hokkaido. A quiet, uneventful end to a war they had fought without pause for nearly 2 years. The division was deactivated on March 15, 1946. The final statistics of World War II were stark. Approximately 44,000 enemy killed, 488 prisoners captured, 2,140 men killed in action, 7,000 wounded. 200 days of sustained combat across 3 major campaigns. The capture rate remained 0.8%, the lowest in the Pacific War. The 77th Infantry Division lived up to its reputation. They were not supposed to be elite soldiers. They were too old, too slow, too ordinary. Accountants, taxi drivers, factory workers, men drafted because the country needed bodies. Yet they killed efficiently, they minimized losses, and most of them went home. 2,140 did not. Their names are carved into memorials across the Pacific, Guam, Leyte, Okinawa. Men considered too old for infantry combat, who fought anyway. Men who turned tank destroyers into ship killers because the mission required it. The night of December 11, 1944 remained a footnote. The last surviving crewman from the M-10 that sank transport number 159 died in 2003. His name was Robert Henderson. He was 84 years old. He never spoke publicly about that night. When his family asked about the war, he said he had done his job and come home. That was all. After his death, his grandson found the service records: Bronze Star, Purple Heart, campaign ribbons for Guam, Leyte, and Okinawa. A citation for exceptional performance during the defense of Ormoc, mentioning the engagement of enemy naval vessels with tank destroyer fire. The grandson had never heard the story. Most of the old bastards never told theirs. They came home in 1946. They went back to driving taxis in Manhattan, keeping books in Brooklyn, working factory lines in Jersey City. They built families. They rebuilt lives. The war was something they survived, not something they wanted to relive. Division reunions were held every year in New York. The Old Bastards Club met on East 39th Street. They spoke of Guam, Leyte, and Okinawa in a language their families never heard. They raised glasses to the 2,140 who never came home. Even there, no one spoke much about sinking ships. It was just another night, Another engagement, another mission completed. The historical significance took decades to surface. Military historians eventually noticed Ormoc. They confirmed it was unique, the only verified instance in World War II where armored fighting vehicles destroyed enemy warships from shore positions. They wrote papers, they cited it as an example of tactical flexibility, but none of that captured what it meant to the men who were there. 15 rounds, 5 ships, illumination flares turning night into day. Japanese soldiers dying in the water while the old bastards fired from prepared positions on shore. No hesitation, no debate, no concern for what the manual said, only the mission. That certainty defined the 77th Infantry Division. Use every weapon available, maximize firepower, minimize risk, complete the mission. The M10 tank destroyer was designed to kill German armor in France. The 77th used it to sink Japanese ships in the Philippines. No one trained them for that. No one wrote the manual. But when transport number 159 tried to land troops at Ormoc, the M10 crews put rounds through the hull and sent it to the bottom, because that was the job. 80 years later, the men are gone. The M10s were scrapped decades ago. Transport number 159 still rests at the bottom of Ormoc Bay, under 15 feet of water and 8 decades of silt. The night of December 11, 1944 survives only in after-action reports and declassified documents few people read. But it happened. American tank destroyers sank Japanese warships once. On one night, in one place. It never happened before. It never happened again. And now you know the story. If this story mattered to you, consider liking the video. It helps ensure these forgotten histories reach more people. Subscribe if you want more documented, archive-based war history. Leave a comment if you wish. Tell us where you're watching from, or whether someone in your family served. These men deserve to be remembered. And by watching, you helped make sure they are.